and welcome back to CS Mentor. In this video, I'm going to be starting off with the Right of Information Act of 2005. So in the previous video, what I had done was I had kind of given the lesson outline and I gave you all a gist of what we'll be studying in lesson number 16, that is the Right of Information Act. Now, you see guys, the Right of Information Act of 2005 is a very easy chapter, alright? So in terms of learning and understanding, I would classify this chapter as one of those chapters where, it's actually even interesting. Okay, it's not just about learning some provisions and sections and all of that stuff. It's actually interesting to learn about this. And for that reason, let's start off immediately with this chapter itself. So you see, friends, the Right of Information Act relates to some kind of an information that has to be given from some public authority to whom? To the public itself. Alright. Now, as you can see over here, this act only came into force in the year 2005. So, prior to 2005, what law existed that allowed us to kind of gather information from these public authorities? The answer was there was nothing. Okay, there was literally no law to tell us that the information that the information that has to be given to the public should be given to us as a matter of right. Alright, so if I'm telling you that there existed no law, then how did the entire provision of the right of information work? It's very simple. The right of information was specifically upheld and integrated within our laws by the Supreme Court of India. Now, the Supreme Court of India is considered one institution or an authority who was capable of ensuring the right of information even though there was no law in existence. Okay, so in this very landmark case, that is the state of Rajasthan versus Raj Narayan. Now, this is a very important case. Many people would also call this case as a landmark case because of the multiple things that were already followed. I mean, the multiple principles that were enunciated in this case. But with specific regards to the right of information, I can say that this case essentially stated that the government has to give over information to the public. So what was held in this case? They said that in a government like ours, wherein the government takes up responsibility, the agents of the public must be responsible for their conduct, and there can be few secrets. The people of the country itself have a right to know. Right to know what? Every public act or everything that is done in a public way in their public functionaries. So, the public is entitled to know the particulars of every public transactions in all its bearings. So, the right to information is not a mere statutory right created by the Right of Information Act. It is essentially a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution of India. Now guys, this is a very important line over here. This right here, the right to information is not a mere statutory right created by the Right of Information Act. It is essentially a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution. What do they mean by this? So, when any right is given by way of the Constitution of India, I would call it a constitutional right. Now, the Constitution of India entertains both your constitutional right as well as your fundamental rights. So, whether it's a fundamental right or a constitutional right, it will be enshrined within the Constitution of India itself. Whereas, if any law other than the Constitution of India, which I would generally call as statutes, if statutes give any kind of rights, I will call it as statutory rights. So the nature of rights is such that fundamental rights are the most important, constitutional rights come second, and statutory rights come third. Okay, so now what are they saying over here? They're saying that the right to information is not just a mere statutory right. It is also essentially a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution of India. So what exactly do they mean by this? We'll move on to the chapter itself where they've given an entire paragraph regarding the constitutional provisions with regards to the Right of Information Act. So let's go into that first before we move into the law itself. Okay. So this is the paragraph which essentially talks about how the right to information was incorporated within, the right of information was incorporated even prior to the Right of Information Act of 2005 coming out. So it was in the case of RP Limited versus Indian Express newspapers, wherein the Supreme Court read into Article 21. Now, what is Article 21? Article 21 is the right to life. So many of you may be asking, ma'am, how exactly is the right to know incorporated within the right to life? Okay, but if y'all do check out my constitutional law videos, which I will be putting out soon, you will realize that your Article 21 essentially consists of three things. It consists of the right of life plus personal liberty, and essentially there is a third thing, but I won't go into that right now. Okay, so the Article 21 states that every person has a right to life and the right of personal liberty. Now, we will be looking solely into the right of life when we are talking about the right to information or the right to know. Now, what they are saying is that it's very interesting, in fact. The way the interpretation has been formed is what I would call very interesting. They say that the right to life essentially involves an ingredient of participatory democracy. Okay, and especially where multiple people are coming together and fighting for their rights and ensuring that rights are properly followed, we can say that the right to life and personal liberty must receive an expanded meaning. Okay, now you may ask, ma'am, what exactly are you even saying? Okay, see, the right to life means you have the right to live. And personal liberty means that you have the right to live in whatever manner you want, as long as you don't disturb anyone else's rights. As simple as that. So, the right to life doesn't just simply mean you have the right to eat, you have the right to some clothes on your back, or the right to shelter. Okay, right to life also includes the right to live a dignified life, the right to live with privacy. Okay, so if you have, you're going about your life and then you realize that the police are constantly following you around, that itself means that there's some kind of a disturbance or irritation. That means you can't do everything that you want because the police are always following you around, but you don't even know for what reason. So the Article 21, that is your right to life and personal liberty, started getting a very expanded meaning as to what exactly the right of life is. And one such thing was that this concept of participatory democracy. Now, what do you mean by participatory democracy? In every democracy, you have some kind of a political superior. Okay. Now, this political superior is brought into power by someone known as voters. Okay. Now, who are these voters? It's basically individuals like you and me. We are the people who go vote for certain individuals who will then go on to rule us or create laws for us. Now, each one of us, these voters, are the people who have a right to choose who will end up governing us. But then, we shouldn't also allow just one person or one party to constantly come into power. We must constantly criticize them. We must constantly question their ideals and their views. And accordingly, we must take our decisions with regards to elections. Okay, this is what I would call as the concept of participatory democracy. Now, to participate in a democracy, you must be aware of what exactly that political party is doing. Now, let's say there's political party A and there's political party B. Now, political party A came into power in the year 2000. Okay. Political party B came into power in the year 2009. Fine. Now, political party A, in the current elections, say now it's the year 2021. Let's assume that elections are coming up. Okay. Now, these two parties A and B, are our biggest contestants. Either party A or party B will come to power. Now, we should know as voters what exactly did the party A do in the year 2000 when they came to power. Did they carry out on all their promises? Did they actually implement all the policies that they said they would implement, or did they not? Similarly, the same thing for Party B. How will we know this unless we're getting the proper information? And unless this information is right, anyone can spread wrong rumors and stories about each other. In fact, your Party B itself will come out and spread false information against Party A. Party A will do the exact same thing. After all, it is an election. So this information becomes very crucial to become a source of proper information. Alright, that is why the Supreme Court decided, yes, this right to information is not a law. The judiciary per se cannot make the law, but what we can do is we can interpret this right to information within a fundamental right and make it so important that it cannot be derogated at any point in time. So this is what the judiciary did right up until 2005, wherein the law came out. And how did they do this? They incorporated it into which one? Article 21. I'll repeat again. Under Article 21, the Supreme Court held that it is a necessary ingredient of participatory democracy. Now, this participatory democracy involves having proper information to take the right decisions. And therefore, that information must be proper and true. Now, the Supreme Court didn't just stop over there. They believe that Article 21, while Article 21 talks about the right to life, you still have an Article 19(1)(a). Now, what is this Article 19(1)(a)? It guarantees to all citizens freedom of speech and expression. Now, I'm pretty sure many of you all have heard about this provision. The right of freedom, the freedom of speech and expression. Now, what does this freedom of speech and expression say? It says that you are allowed to voice out your thoughts and express your opinion so long as it does not incite violence or riots or harm the public, harm the image of the country, or destroy relations between our country and other countries. There are certain rules which we would have all studied in Article 19. So, here this article specifically provides about freedom of speech and expression. So you must be wondering, ma'am, how is this related to the right to know? Now, at the time that you as a citizen are exercising your freedom of speech and expression, it is a requirement that when you're expressing your voice and opinion, you must have an educated opinion. Okay? Now, imagine you're given false opinion and you go start voicing out your thoughts and opinions about the same, and people just strike you down as, oh, she's just one crackpot rambling on and on. No. Here, you are allowed to exercise your freedom of speech and expression, and therefore, you must have an educated opinion about the same. And for that reason itself, the Indian judiciary very smartly and very tactfully implemented the right to know within Article 19(1)(a) of the Indian Constitution. Okay, so essentially what is happening over here is that under your the right to know came in as a statutory right only after 2005. But then prior to 2005, the judiciary was already working behind the scenes to implement it as a fundamental right. Now you may ask me the question, ma'am, how does it benefit to have the right of information as both a fundamental right as well as a statutory right? Now the simple reason and understanding is that when the judiciary implemented the right to information within Article 21 and Article 19(1)(a), the implementation was merely substantive in nature, which means it only was implemented by way of law. Like, if you go to law, then the law will probably say, yes, you have the right of information. But procedurally, there was no way to implement it. All right. So that is one drawback of it being implemented as a fundamental right. That means there were no procedural rights. So what the statutory right brings in is, it brings in both the substantive as well as the procedural aspect. Now, what do you mean? I mean, what am I meaning when I say procedural and substantive? It's very simple. You have the right to information, okay? But how do you go about to implement it? Who do you approach? Who do you ask the information? If you go to any government authority sitting in their offices, if you go up to them and say, listen, give me information regarding all of this, he will probably kick you out of his office. Okay? But now, with the coming in of the RTI Act, okay, of 2005, he is duty bound to give you that information. So while it was all well and good to have it incorporated within the fundamental rights, procedurally it was more of a hassle to go and get information from the government. And our government is not exactly known for just being a very nice government where they give out information freely. Okay, so that is the difference between the right to information as implemented under the fundamental rights and the right of information as implemented by the statutory rights. If it was to be implemented in the fundamental rights, only a few people would benefit out of it. That is, the people who have the resources and the energy and the time to go before the judiciary, to go before all the courts in the judiciary, and to get it implemented as a fundamental right. Whereas the right to information being implemented as a statutory right makes it available to all persons who come under the ambit of the Right to Information Act of 2005. So friends, let's move on to the next part of this chapter, and that is the preamble of the law. Now, the preamble of any law is a kind of an introduction or a kind of lays down the objective of the act. Okay, it says what this act is about, and it even lays down what this act promises to do by its implementation. So, what is this law? The Right to Information Act of 2005 is an act to provide for setting out a practical regime for the right to information for citizens to secure access to information under the control of public authorities. This one's fairly simple, right? You have the public authorities and you have the public. So how will the public get information from the public authorities? Through a practical regime. That means it must be simple and easy to implement. It must not consist of too many sets of rules that the people cannot follow. The second one is that they are saying in order to promote transparency and accountability in the working of every public authority, the constitution of a CIC, that is the Central Information Commission, and a State Information Commission, and for matters connected herewith or incidental thereto. So what are the objectives of this law? Let's go one by one. One, it is a practical regime for the right of information to citizens to secure information from public authorities. The second one is to promote transparency and accountability. And how will they promote this transparency and accountability? Through the formation of some commissions known as the Central Information Commissions and the State Information Commissions. Okay, and usually under these information commissions you have something known as Public Information Officer, a PIO. Okay, and lastly, let's see, this is third, and any other matters connected therewith. So any other matters related to the right to give information comes under the ambit of this law. So friends, we've understood that the Right of Information Act is to set out a procedural framework to essentially allow citizens to get information from any public authority. So let's go into this act a little more. This act provides an effective framework for effectuating the right to information recognized under Article 19 of the Constitution. Okay, so this is both Article 19 as well as Article 21. The Right to Information Bill, that means whenever a law is passed, it is first introduced as a bill in Parliament. So, in the Lok Sabha it was passed on May 11th, and in the Rajya Sabha it was passed on May 12th, 2005. So literally one day after the other it was passed in both Houses of Parliament, and the President gave his acceptance on June 15th, 2005. The Act was considered a watershed legislation because it was such a significant milestone in the history of right to information, which allows for transparency and access to accountability. So if we are to look at some of the salient features of this Act, I would say that reading these salient features of the Act itself kind of essentially explains the full chapter itself. Okay, so first thing, let's go into this law is applicable to the whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. So this I would call as the extent of application. Every law will say this. It will say that this law is applicable to the whole state of Tamil Nadu, or this law is applicable to the entire country except these states, or it's applicable to the whole of country except Jammu and Kashmir. So this every law will provide. Okay. Now, it provides for a very definitive day for its commencement, that is 120 days from enactment. What do you mean by this? It's very simple. If we are to set in a practical regime wherein citizens can go approach any public authority, okay, so here we have the public authority and then you have the public. So for the public to go and get this information from the public authority, it cannot just happen overnight. Am I correct? So the public authority must take effort to gather all the information and publish it. So that's why the law is giving them 120 days to do the same. The next one is that it shall apply to public authorities. So we'll study about the definition of public authorities later on in the chapter, and all these public authorities have to give information. All citizens have the right to information. The most crucial thing over here is citizens. Nobody else is allowed to go and request for information. Okay? Because if in certain cases anyone other than citizens can also require information, they are considered as third parties, which again I will explain later. Then you have the public information officers and the assistant public information officers. So we'll call them PIO and APIO. Okay. Now these are officers set up within this law for the purpose of dealing with requests of information and to assist persons in seeking information. So these are the people who you will approach saying that, see, this is the information that I want. Now, at the time that you're seeking an information, you might have to pay a small fee. Now, how much that fee is will depend and vary from each application. Now, not all persons, that is, not all public authorities are compelled to give certain information. Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say we have some Indian soldiers, okay, are currently in a foreign country. They are in a foreign country for the purpose of the security of our country. Okay. If citizens went and requested information as to their location or the strategic location of some of India's assets, okay, that might be detrimental to the security of our country. Now, let's say we have a secret naval base located in some part of the world. Obviously, we don't know where the secret base is, okay? But as a citizen, if I go up to the defense ministry, okay, if I go up to them and ask for this information, then this information is now public record. If I go and ask this information from the defense ministry, it is now giving away the secret of that secret naval base, and therefore detrimental to the security of our country. So therefore, certain informations which relate to the security and the strategic assets of our country and a bunch of other things that we learn later on in the chapter, this information will not be given, especially with regards to maybe secret operations or anything like that. That information will not be given to the citizens. So these are known as exempted from disclosure. And then finally, as they mention over here, intelligence and security agencies are specifically exempted from this act. So RBI, intelligence agencies, you all would have heard of RAW or CBI, all of them. The ongoing investigations and processes will not be made known to the public. Okay, so guys, these are the salient features of this act. Now, we'll finish this particular video with the objective of the act. The objective of the act is very, very simple. It simply confers a right on all citizens, that is the right to information. Okay, it's not putting an imposition on anyone. It's in fact telling citizens at any point that you want information, I will give it to you. And this law is setting out a practical regime for the right to information for citizens alone. Which information? Information only held by public authorities, and the purpose of this is to promote transparency and accountability in the working of every public authority. So friends, very simply put, you have the right to any kind of information as long as it is not exempted. The purpose of receiving this information is to secure and hold public authorities accountable for their actions. And it is to promote transparency between the workings of the public and the people. Do stay tuned in for the remaining videos on jurisprudence interpretation in general laws, and I shall see you in the next video.